Welcome to the Champs App podcast. Champs App is your recruiting and development co-pilot. If you are a player, parent, or coach, make sure to check out more content and tools to help navigate the world of youth hockey at champs.app. Also, if you've listened to the Champs App podcast in the past and it has helped you with your recruiting or hockey development, please tell your teammates and friends about Champs App. It would be even better if you subscribe to the podcast and review or rate us on whichever platform you're listening to or watching us on. On today's episode, I talk with Haley Skarupa, head scout of the USA Hockey Women's National Team. This is part 2 in our conversation about the girls' player development camps. We discuss our hockey journey, which included winning Olympic gold in 2018 and playing professional hockey. In addition, we discuss how USA Hockey picks players for the under-18 girls camp, how the U18 World Championship team roster is constructed, and what happened at this year's World Championships in Finland. Most importantly, Haley discusses exactly what she looks for when evaluating players. This was an amazing conversation, so please enjoy. Before we get to this amazing episode, most folks don't know all the great ways that Champs App can be your hockey recruiting and development co-pilot. So we thought we'd highlight different areas of Champs App in each episode. Introducing the Champs App native mobile apps for iOS and Android. Yes, we finally put the app in Champs App. Champs App serves as your ultimate recruiting and development co-pilot, helping athletes, coaches, parents, and agents/advisors navigate the world of youth sports with ease. The mobile apps offer all the same features available in the browser version, plus the added convenience of logging in with your Apple or Google credentials. Please note that subscription to tools or services must still be completed via browser, similar to purchasing a book on Amazon Kindle. Download the Champs App mobile app today and take your recruiting and development co-pilot everywhere you go. I'm very excited to welcome Haley Skarupa to the podcast. Originally from Rockville, Maryland, Haley played college hockey at Boston College and was a longtime member of the U.S. Women's National Team, winning countless international events, starting with the under-18 team and then on to the national team, where she won gold at the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. In addition, Haley competed professionally in the WHL. In October of 2023, Haley began serving as the head scout for the U.S. Women's National Team program. In this role, she was responsible for identifying, evaluating, and recruiting potential players across various levels, including the Olympics, Women's World Championship, Select Series, and the Under-18 Women's World Championship. Welcome to the podcast, Haley.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Got a lot of responsibility for USA Hockey, but let's get to that soon. But let's start off first, like we do with all our guests, talking about how you started playing hockey in Maryland.
Yeah, I kind of just on a whim, like neither of my parents played hockey. They went to Boston College actually, but not for sports. My older brother just was playing roller hockey, street hockey with his friends out in the driveway on the street. Our neighbors had like a long driveway that we would always play on. So as a lot of younger sisters do, I wanted to do whatever he did. So went out to the driveway onto the street. And then when he wanted to switch to ice hockey, obviously I wanted to as well. And there was a little hesitation from my mom because hockey wasn't very popular just in general in that area at the time, especially girls. Like there weren't many girls teams. I obviously started playing boys hockey, but I'm pretty persistent, and she, saw how much I loved just being out there. So once she kind of noticed my passion there, both my parents kind of helped me and went all in, and I can't thank them enough for all of their support over the years. So I started playing like just boys, for the Montgomery Blue Devils right out of Rockville Ice Arena, which is luckily like 8 to 10 minutes down the street from my house. Then moved, squirts, but for the first like several years I did play boys hockey because it was the best option. And around that time is also when Alex Ovechkin got drafted to the Washington Capitals. So that's kind of my
question.
Skyrocketed my interest and passion for the sport. Is just like I was obsessed with Ovi, and just it's been honestly like pretty incredible following his career like till the present day. But when I was younger, like I just wanted to be Alex Ovechkin. So, and I went to a lot of my brother's games as well, and kind of just wanted to emulate everything him and his friends and teammates did. So just throughout the years, that's kind of how I got started. And I didn't know like you could play college hockey. I didn't know you could play at the Olympics. I think the first women's Olympics I watched hockey was 2010. So I just loved playing hockey. I played all sports, but like for whatever reason, hockey, it's just the most dynamic, really, fast, competitive. If you can't skate, you can't play. And That's kind of what I loved most about it. So I just kind of put everything that I had into there, and ultimately found the Washington Pride, which skated out of that rink too. And we traveled around like all of North America. My all 4 years of high school, I played for the Pride for Kush Sidhu, who I can't speak more highly of him and everything he helped me with my playing career and just on and off the ice. And that's kind of what really prepared me for, the U18 team, gave me that opportunity, college and beyond.
Perfect. So you are known for your speed and your offensive skill. I'm curious how your one-timer is, since you idolized Alex Ovechkin.
Yeah, I know. It took it honestly was like later on in my career that I think I actually figured out how to utilize my one timer. I don't really have much of like, I didn't have like a wind up. I just kind of was more of like a quick release. That's because I didn't have the hardest shot, but I wanted to be precise and I wanted to be deceptive. So taking elements of his game like that was something that I because that's like his biggest asset is like his shot and his one timer. I don't have the velocity that he did, but that was something I always really worked on, was just accuracy and quickness and deception with my release, because I knew I was never going to have the hardest shot. So let's see how I can, make the most of it.
Well, so one key piece, what made you such a good player? Like, what was, you obviously didn't have people around you who you could benchmark as, like as great players. Like we've talked to some phenomenal players who were surrounded by other Olympians, even playing as, in youth hockey, but you probably didn't have that. So what was it that you were able to do to get to that level and have that compete level and the skill level?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a combination of things. Like since I wanted, when I wasn't on the ice, I'd wanted to, be stick handling in my garage, shooting pucks, like not because I felt like I had to when I was younger, just because I genuinely loved doing it. So it was like, I want to get my homework done, go to my other, soccer practices so I can go home and literally just like play roller hockey and stick handle. And I think honestly over the years, like those things do add up, like just working on things. And then as I got older, I like wanted to, do that more intentionally. But outside of that too, in the off seasons, I would skate and train with guys. It was like a summer program. I think it started as like Maryland model and then pivoted to Pinnacle Performance. I think it might still be around, but like I skated with like, Team Maryland guys, junior guys when I was older, up until like, NCAA, like college players through, when I was in 8th grade through the end of my career, really. So every off season I would skate and train with them. And I really think that helped like massively, just like really challenging myself from a speed and physicality standpoint. Like those coaches were great. They were always, I feel like we're like evolving with the game. And then I could bring that to the Washington Pride, where Kush would help me, develop all of those skills and kind of implement everything during those practices and then see that translate to games. So it was like a pretty cool process, like looking back on it. Like in the moment, it was like, scary. It's just made a bunch of guys. Like they obviously are, they don't want you to beat them. But that's what I loved about it, because I knew I was going to get better and I needed that to push me, because I, wasn't being surrounded by amazing players every single day. Like I loved my teammates and, they push me a lot, but that kind of gave me that edge every off season.
Great. And you said you switched from boys hockey to girls hockey at age 12. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So do you think that you could have or should have played an additional year or two with boys before you switched to girls? Do you think that would have helped? What's your opinion on the right time to switch?
Yeah, I think like honestly, I think it really depends on the person. It's different for everyone. Like some of my, national team teammates waited till, high school. Like Dana Trevino, I played many years with her. She played at Boston College. She played boys hockey until she went to Shattuck St. Mary's. So like up until high school, and a lot of people have done that. Like for me, I knew like the physicality of it would have like taken away from my, just like playing more free and worrying less about like getting hit, things like that. Cause I wasn't a super physical big player. And at a certain age, the guys, obviously, I was like the biggest player when I was younger with all the boys. For whatever reason, I was like a tall kid. But then, come peewees, they like shoot up and now they're all towering over me. And you get, a lot of guys who get it and are respectful, but a lot who, want to run the girl, things like that. And for me, it just wasn't worth the risk if I can still get that time in the off season. I did play 1 year with my public school while I was playing with the Pride. It was a boys team. My brother was a senior. I was a freshman, and we won like the state championship that year. It was like not super high quality hockey, but that was like the last like true like season I had with guys, even though there was a gap in between. And it was fun, but once he graduated high school, I was like, no, I'm not. Like he was kind of like protecting me out there. I was like, I'm not doing that again. But yeah, so that's kind of, but it depends. Like some people like that and they can handle it. And I say, if you can, go for it. If you are tentative and you don't think it's the right fit to stay with boys, then switch to girls. Because now there's a lot of really high end girls hockey teams and programs out there too.
Gotcha. Okay, we need to keep moving. So you mentioned both your parents went to Boston College. Is that why you ended up there?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I would say that's not why. Like they were like, go wherever you want. They did not like sway me in that direction. I just went to men's hockey games and football games and had been on campus when I was younger. And I just knew how much, honestly, they loved it there, despite not playing a sport. So I kind of narrowed it down to Wisconsin, Harvard, and Boston College. Wisconsin was like, they still are, but they're the powerhouse at the time. Harvard is like, it's hard to not consider that school when they want you. And I knew I wanted to be in Boston, which kind of ruled out Wisconsin. And then I like visited both schools, and I definitely recommend visiting schools before you commit. I know it's not as common anymore, but it does make a difference as to where you really think you'll fit in and be happy. And BC, it was just hard to turn down. The coaches, the team, the campus is beautiful. And it was a great balance of like academics and athletics for me. And I loved every second of it. And it was the best decision I made.
Gotcha. And so let's get to the most important question. What are you doing to ensure that Boston College wins the Beanpot and breaks Northeastern's streak? Because, it's been a few years.
I know. It's been a bit. We won 2 out of the 4, I think. I know. I wish I could do something. But I think like they'll get back there. Like it's a hard tournament because it's kind of like all of a sudden it's Beanpot, and anyone can kind of win it. Northeastern has been on a roll. So yeah, I wish I was there, but yeah, next year. I'm feeling good next year.
I think they could use your scoring prowess for next season. All right, we need to keep moving. We're going to talk about the under-18s team, and obviously you went through it yourself for I believe for all 3 years that you were eligible. So we're going to skip over that for a moment. And but here's what my question to you: when I mentioned the song Gangnam Style, what does that make you think of?
Pyeongchang, South Korea.
And what were you doing there?
That was where the Olympics were in 2018, where we won gold.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is during the opening ceremony. What was it like being in the opening ceremony and winning gold?
Yeah, just like so surreal, like a dream come true. Obviously, like to be able to walk in opening ceremonies, see like our family and friends in the stands, and with all the other Team USA athletes, but athletes all around the world. Like it didn't feel real at all. And the energy was high because of songs like Gangnam Style. It was just like an incredible atmosphere, and winning, it was just like, it's really hard to put into words just because, and our family and friends were on the ice. Like it's just as much their reward as it is ours. Like they helped us every step of the way. So being able to share it with them in that moment was like just unbelievable.
Gotcha. And to talk to folks about how challenging it is to kind of make the national team, because you've lived it, year after year for I believe almost 10 years. What's it like, the stress and the mindset that you need to have? Because I'm sure there were a lot of frustrations and even disappointments along the way. I'm sure you were hoping to play in multiple Olympics and things like that. So
yeah, it's a really hard team to make. And I can kind of speak on, I wasn't ever, a superstar like player on the team. Like every event, every camp, every tournament, like every shift, you're always like having to prove yourself. Even players who are like superstars, it's like they say every camp, it's like nothing's ever guaranteed. And someone's always like working to take your spot. And it's an interesting dynamic because while you're like really good friends with all of these players and you want them to do well, and you've played with and against them for years, like you're also competing against them for a spot on the team. So it's like, you want your line mate to be successful, but they might be successful and take your spot. So it's like kind of just figuring out, what your kind of role can be, how you can best facilitate the team and do everything you can and try to enjoy that journey too. Because, at the beginning, I feel like I was getting so caught up, like being stressed with like things I couldn't control. And by the end, I was like, you know what, like whatever I can do best for the team, like that's should be my priority, regardless of what that may be. And, I want to try and have some fun along the way because, I'm going to look back on this and like this should be something like I'm proud of. So that's like kind of like how I like shifted my mindset as I got older in the organization. And it kind of just helped like mentally, like, um, put myself in the best position to make a team and help the team as well.
Gotcha. All right. So got to keep moving. You played pro hockey for the NWHL, but you're one of the players who helped pave the way for the PWHL, but didn't actually play in it. And we spoke with Brianna Decker about it, and she chose to retire before doing it. I'm curious, do you think you were still good enough to play in the PWHL last year if you had just played one more year?
I know my dad asked me, like, I was visiting my parents last week and we were watching like one of the games and he's like, do you wish that you played last year or this year? And like the answer is like it would obviously be incredible, like being able to, play with all the fans and just like, I mean, it's unbelievable what the league has done and how it's grown and just women's hockey in general. Like the people everyone who came together and put that together, like they deserve everything that it's all of the recognition and attention it's getting. For me, like I kind of like the last couple of years of my career, like I was working a full-time job. I wasn't like training and playing, so I wasn't really like at the peak of my game. And I'm someone like if I'm not really at my best, like it's not really fun for me. So my last year playing, like it was a blast, but it was kind of just like weekends. Like there were, Olympians playing and they were like training and whatnot, but I was kind of just like having fun with my friends, which if I did that last year or this year in the PWHL, like I would get rocked out there. So like the answer is like it would be awesome and I would love to if I was like, back at like the peak of my game. But right now, like I would get tossed around out there. But I love like following along and I'm so proud of everyone who like is making this league possible and all the players who are being able to like showcase their talent, every day and every week.
Well, I hope all the players today and even the future generations appreciate the path that you paved for them. That you basically didn't get anywhere near as much reward other than some nice medals at the international level, but you didn't get the accolades at the pro level that you probably should have if the leagues were around when you were playing. So
As
hope
long as it's
folks appreciate
happening
that.
now, I'm good with that.
All right, cool. All
Someone
right.
should be getting the credit.
Well, now you are helping the next generations through USA Hockey. So I believe your title is head scout. So maybe tell folks what head scout is and what your role is with USA Hockey.
Yeah. I mean, there's like a lot to it from the U18 level. Like that's kind of where I'm more focused on and like not specialized in, but like that's where most of my attention goes is with the U18 national team because like their coaching staff, like that's not their like full-time thing. And like, these are like really new prospects, new players that need just more focus and attention, just like across the country, things like that, like finding that next generation. So like that's my kind of like first focus is the U18 team, like evaluating and finding new talent as well as evaluating the current players from previous events who've been with us. And then, not only just like seeing if they're, capable of being at a camp or on a team, but like being a resource for them as well as someone who like went through this process and has been in their shoes. Like I try and make myself available for them, like asking questions, like they shouldn't have to just go through this process blind. So that's like something I kind of like just being on the side is just like a helpful resource for a lot of these players. And as well as like the college kids, like then kind of helping evaluate them for whether it's like a Six Nations tournament, which is more college specific, or like a national team camp, college series, things like that. And then ultimately that funnels up to the national and Olympic teams, where I, evaluate PWHL games and then go to like traveling with them at the rivalry series tournaments, things like that, evaluating like, those games too. So kind of from age like 14 to, 35 and everything in between. That's kind of like where what I do day to day.
Basically, you get your job is paid to watch a lot of hockey.
Watch a lot of hockey.
Yeah, and travel. So that's not a bad role.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Kristen. Maybe you have more information since last time I spoke with her. Any update on centralization for the Olympics, given that there's the PWHL? Do you think there will be centralization next year? Because we're almost exactly a year away from Milan Cortina for the 2026 Olympics. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not like in those conversations. It seems like there might not be a centralization, that like the teams will get together a certain amount of times like per month. But it's not like they're going to be centralized in one location. That's just kind of the things I've gathered and heard. I don't even know if it's public knowledge, but it doesn't seem like something that should be so secretive. So like that's kind of what I have like heard, but not 100% confirmed. But with like the league, since the league will go on, it's obviously it will be difficult to do both. But I kind of like not having a centralization, just like from a player standpoint. Like it just like the pressure just continues to build and build and build, and you're in this one place. And like I think kind of just being dispersed and playing professional hockey and then getting together every now and then like seems ideal as a player. But we'll see how it all plays out.
All right, well, stay tuned, I guess. We'll figure this out. Hopefully they'll figure it out, by the summer. All right, so let's talk more about on the youth side, on the under 18 side. So from what Kristen said in our conversation is that there are some significant changes to how the girls' camps are going to be run this year. And so how will things be different this coming summer from past years?
Yeah, I think what we're working towards is like, I think the U18 select camp last year was 4 teams. And I think we're going to narrow that back down to 2 this summer, which just like allows more, like the depth of the 16 and 17 and select 15 camps will be, those will just be like deeper camps and teams as a whole. But it's just like from an evaluation standpoint, going into like the series, having 2 teams at U18 select, you get the top players all in one place, and B, it's just easier to evaluate 2 teams to narrow down to 1 within a week as opposed to 4. So it'll make the 16, 17 and 15s camp more competitive, and it'll also make the U18 select camp more competitive. So that's like kind of a win-win for everyone. So that is what I would say would be like the biggest change there.
And are the number of teams for 16-17 camp or the number of players invited? I understand that that's probably also changing, going from 8 to 10. Is that correct?
Yeah. Just because since we are taking away 2 teams worth of kids from U18 select, then we want to make sure we're not like losing like opportunities for kids who would go to 16-17 camp to earn away to 18s camp. Like those kids are still it's kind of like, anyone's game. So just like expanding that a little bit, for sure.
Got it. And I believe for the last few years, there were 13 players from 16-17s camp that were selected to go to the 18s camp. Is that number increasing, decreasing? What's your perspective on how many people get invited directly versus have to earn it through 16-17s camp?
Yeah, I think that will also probably change for like this coming year. I think like if you were at U18 select camp last year, but you like weren't on the U18 team, then you're not guaranteed a spot at the U18 select camp, just because now there are 2 teams. And again, like every camp, every, event is like a fresh slate for players. So still navigating like, assuming like U18 returners will go to U18 select camp just because they were literally on the team last year. Like that, makes a lot of sense. And then from there, after like the district weekends, kind of evaluating like who goes straight through. Like there's not a set number, just because I don't think like we should be like, this is the amount of number of players and now we're having to like play Tetris. If someone deserves it, they should go. If we want another look, then we'll send them to 16-17 camp. So no allotted number yet.
Got it. Okay. So let's just talk about picking players for the under 18 camp, particularly ones that go directly there. So what do you do during the year for under 18 player evaluation?
Yeah, so it's, going to a lot of tournaments. So whether that's, starting around like this summer, obviously, and then like Labor Day, and then kind of like everything in between. So, tournaments, some of those league play, trying to see, Shattuck, because they're not like in a league. So if they came out east to the Philadelphia showcase like right before Thanksgiving. So like going to that because like it's like the biggest bang for your buck type thing. Cause I like to see like high end teams like play against each other. But I also like to see because I played on the Washington Pride. So like you never know like who's playing. You know, I want to kind of see everyone. So and then basically like kind of I break it up into like districts. So like if there's a player who really stood out or someone I want to watch, like I have a watch list and I break it down into districts. So, oh, she is in the Atlantic district forward, birth year, this is where she plays, this is her grad year. Just like I like to have as much information as possible on everyone. Left wing, right wing, like, just as much as I can. And then from there, like when the district like the district weekends come up, my whole, database is kind of built out of all these players from across like the years. And I mean, the tournaments. And then we have other evaluators too who are at these tournaments who will we have like a whole tournament like notes database. Then we pull from there to see if they're we want to put them in the watch list or not, and we meet about that. So it's like an extensive process, but pretty straightforward too. We want to make sure like no one's missed. Like I talk to coaches, like college coaches who are also watching, like club team coaches, things like that, just to get everyone's perspective. Like I'm someone like the more the merrier. Like I want to kind of hear everything just to make sure no one's missed.
So do you attend every district camp?
Uh, no, just because like I think this year there's like 5 or 6 all in one weekend. So I try and get to as many as I can. And kind of like prioritize obviously like Minnesota, Mass, like they have a lot of players. Like, New York is important. I wasn't able to go last year because it overlapped, things like that. But we do have like kind of like a evaluator committee. So there's like the ones specifically for the districts, but then we have one and we work with the districts as well, just so the districts has eyes on it, but they only like see their own district. So we want people who have like someone who came from Minnesota to Pacific or Southeast to Atlantic, and you have like a good reference point. So I get it to as many as I can. If like I'm available, I'll go to as long as they don't overlap.
Perfect. And if I remember correctly, at least when I went to Pacific districts, there was a head goalie scout that was going to different events. And so, how are goalies treated differently than skaters from this evaluation process?
Yeah.
Especially since I doubt you played goalie very much.
Yeah.
So yeah, you may not be the best person to be evaluating goalies.
Yes, and I make that very clear. I'm like, I can tell you based on the score, and like if a goalie stands out to be really good or really bad, I'll notice that, but like that's not obviously what I'm looking for, and that's also not my area of expertise. So we do have like, our head goalie coach for U18s, Mac, who was great last year, and then the year before was like Sonia, and she's still like here like with us as an evaluator as well. We have like pretty much like a committee specifically for goalie scout evaluators too. So each district weekend will have 1 or 2 of us as player evaluators, but also 1 or 2 goalie evaluators as well. And we try to make sure that they're also present at these different tournaments throughout the year too. Because that's obviously it's a completely different game and position. So we treat them very differently.
Perfect. Okay. So, how important are nationals? Because I'm assuming you're scouting at nationals, the top teams. And let's just say you're from Michigan and you're not one of the teams from Michigan that made it, or from Illinois, or something like that. There's a lot of good players on okay
Yeah.
teams that you're not going to see at nationals. But nationals is kind of like you have recency bias. That's right before you're starting to make these selections.
Yeah, nationals is really important, obviously, because outside of like worlds and that's kind of like the next big tournament. So it's just like seeing how players perform in like high pressure, high level situations against other really good teams. If you're not at nationals, like I would hope I would see your team. Like I have, a whole list of like all the like a lot of the different teams, and I would hope I would see you play before that at the very least. And if not, then like at that district weekend, like if you're like if you're a high level player, like eligible for U18 select camp, like I would really like to think like we won't miss you because we'll either see you throughout the season. Like we'll hear about you to go watch, we'll come across you at a tournament, or you'll be at the district weekend that will like have you on that watch list to see, or like, if last resort we haven't watched you yet, then you'll stand out there. So there's a lot of different touch points. If you're playing throughout the season, you're going to the district tryouts, like we will see you.
Gotcha. All right. So once again, this might relate to your experience of coming up in Maryland, but how do you evaluate top players that may not play in traditional markets or play, let's say, on boys teams or in Canada? Like there's a goalie for Minnesota Duluth who only played boys hockey in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and never got seen by anybody. And yet now she's at Minnesota Duluth, but never even made it to a single camp for USA Hockey.
Yeah. Did she go to district camps?
I'm not sure.
Tryouts?
I'm
Like that's because
I'm
that's
not sure.
kind of like if you play on a team that, if you play boys or a team like not in the US or something like that, like, but you're, say you live in Minnesota or Michigan, whatever it is, like going, like I obviously, like I was in the Southeast district, like I went to Georgia, Florida, like the most random places, but like you got to go to those district weekends because like that's where like we're all there for those, like, and that's like for that reason. Like if we haven't seen, if you're playing boys and you show up and we're like, wow, who's that, where does she play, like we'll do our homework, we'll do our research, and we're like, that's why we haven't seen her. Like put her on the list. It's not like, oh, like this is the first time we're seeing her, we have to watch her again. Like I'm all for, like, if you earned, a right to like go to this camp, like you should be there at the very least. So like especially because like that's kind of where I came from too, like I wasn't in a traditional hockey market. So it's really going to those district weekends if you play in a random place type thing. But I also hear like too, like from different coaches like throughout the year, like, oh, did you hear about XYZ, she plays boys, things like that, like, oh, my dad coaches my nephew's team and he played against this team in New York and there's this girl on the team, she's really good, like I look into her and boom, like the next she's in the New York district tryout. So it's like a lot of those things too. It's a small world.
Perfect. Okay, so now let's go picking players from 16, 17's camp to go to under 18's camp. So what is it you look for forwards, D, and goalies?
Yeah, it's there's kind of like, it's a layered kind of system, like for forwards and D, like basically like I kind of break it down of like you have like a few physical elements, like skating and speed, the game's gotten a lot faster. So that's like something that is kind of just like a natural standout thing. You don't really have to look for it. Like physicality and strength, the game's gotten more physical, like players, can they win a board, like a wall battle, are they getting knocked off the puck, things like that. And then like for forward specifically, like goal scoring ability, I know not all forwards are like goal scorers and we're not always looking for like the superstars, but that's obviously, if someone's able to put the puck in the back of the net, it's a very valuable skill to have like on a consistent basis. And then just for forwards and D as well, like D zone details, stick details, stops and starts, blocking shots, like things like that, being disciplined in the D zone. Cause a lot of these forwards, like this was me too when I was their age, like, defense is kind of like, second, we'll do that if we need to. Like I want to fly the zone, get the puck, go end to end, and they can get away with it at, on their teams, but that's kind of like at the next level, at Worlds, things like that. Like those things really matter. And we don't have that much time to like teach them in a few weeks. So that's kind of like the physical, like hockey specific side, but then there's also like the IQ and mental side of it that I think is really important. So like decision making with the puck, vision, anticipation, and like speed of decision making versus like balanced with like quality of decisions, like composure, like what types of plays do you make under pressure versus when you have time and space. And then like also play away from the puck. So a lot of these players, again, they're used to having the puck on their stick, like they're the go-to person, power play, penalty kill, even strength, everything. But it's like, how do they play when they don't have the puck? Are they able to fill lanes, support the puck carrier properly? Like what are their angles like when they're forechecking and breaking the puck out, things like that. And I think that's like, for me, like just personally, the most interesting and like fun thing to look for, because it's like everyone, not everyone, but a lot of players can like go end to end, and they're working on like skills at home and watching like highlight reels and want to like repeat that, but it's like who is really focused on like the details away from the puck, like who is back checking with the purpose, knowing like situational awareness, when to break it out, and like make a tape to tape pass versus just like we need to get the puck out, transitional play, like all of those types of things I think is really fun to watch for, especially at a young age. Cause like if a kid has like, all the physical elements paired with like the IQ and awareness piece, like they're a pretty special player. And then lastly, just like the cultural side, which you don't really see, like me as a scout, like I don't always see that. I ask kind of for it and I can somewhat see it, but like, you know, body language, how do you respond if you get scored on, or, you face some adversity, you get a penalty, you get benched, like what's their next shift like? How do they respond to that? Are they a good teammate? Like, do they look like they're frustrated when they're not, playing on a good line? Like just all of those things. And then just like their habits, like stops and starts. If they're doing testing, like it's important to look at that just to see like who puts in the work in the off season. And that's kind of like my conglomeration of like I have it kind of listed out, but like things I look for, and that our evaluators look for too. And it's not just one thing. But I think it's important to kind of have a balance of all of those.
Well, that's a very in-depth answer for
Yeah.
so I hope folks are listening to it and then kind of re-listening to it and breaking it down so that they really appreciate that's what the checklist looks like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
how it all
There's
works
the
together.
formula, I guess.
Yeah. So Kristen asked me to save this question for you. So, and she did mention, at 16-17's camp, when there's just 8 teams, it's really hard to evaluate so many players in basically 4 days. And now you can be up to 10 teams. So here's the question. Do you use analytics for evaluating players?
Not like, I would say we're getting for the U18 level, we're getting more into it. Like we use the prospect exchange when it comes to like video and like some stats, like, shot attempts, like like chances, like obviously face-offs, heat maps, things like that. Like at the actual national, like the camps itself, not we haven't really gone much into it yet. Like having like real time like analytics, like expected goals for, expected goals against. Like I think it's still like on the hockey side, like kind of it's people are definitely like getting more into it, but for the women's side, since hasn't been so much like data to like compare it to or things like that, like it seems a little new that like I like to use it as a reference point, but I'm not going to be like married to it, because like expected goals for example, like what my next question is like, then why didn't that go in the net? Like I like goals for and expected goals for, like I know they're like chances and whatever, but like I just need to like kind of know more about like what is going into all of that. But I know it's super valuable, and I'm very on board with it. I just it's trying to figure out like, in stat versus, a staffleets, like things like that, like what is the best balance for us at the U18 level. It's such a new, like younger kids type thing.
Gotcha. So you should know that I wrote a piece in 2023 about how I analyzed all the forwards in the D who got picked from the 16-17's camp and how their stats compare to what I would call the top players who weren't selected. Talk about
Interesting.
how
Yeah.
they were, and then I published it, and I immediately got an email by a top 15 D1 college coach, saying that they would love to see analytics included in player evaluation by USA Hockey,
Yeah.
because and I used I didn't use goals for and goals against. I used more basic things like pass completion rate and zone entries and things like that,
Yeah.
which are more actually how does the player play in the game, or
Right.
can they make the outlet pass and things like that. So anyhow, I think that it would be really helpful, especially when the you don't need it in real time because you can still make decisions
Right.
later on. But it's using that data a little bit more effectively over, let's say a period of a week after the event, to go back and say, okay, does the eye test match the data or not? And
Yeah.
maybe is there something that we missed? So anyhow, if you
Yeah.
ever
No,
want to have a conversation that we could do that. So separately.
yeah, I
So.
definitely, yeah, don't disagree. I think it's very important, and we should probably get into it very soon.
Cool. All right, let's talk about U18 roster construction. All right, so First thing I noticed is that there were 13 eligible players from the 2024 gold medal team to return, but 5 of them were not even invited to even play in the summer series. So I'm just curious, is there a reason why that happens? For some of the players, I actually have a hunch because, I'm at least familiar with some of the age group, but I'd rather hear it from you. So, what's your perspective on players not coming back who actually played on the gold medal team?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like with different birth years, like come different players and different, skill sets, things like that. So the 2009 for us at least, like that age group was really like super talented and like came into U18 select camp and throughout the whole year really was just impressing like a lot of people with just like not, their skill and things like that, but just like their overall maturity of, playing at a high level and just being consistent with their play. So I think that kind of like opened our eyes to like, yeah, they're young and it is a risk to take more like some of these double underage players and leave off some of the players who were on the team last year. But that's kind of just like the route we took. We bet on like those kids and knowing like they have another year after that and another year after that. Like the experience also is huge. Like it didn't, we didn't win this year. And I definitely think like there was, some kids who are young and nervous and they haven't played on that stage before. And I think they're the types of, players who can also like learn from that and use that to come back even stronger next year. I do really believe that. And for the players who weren't, who made it, who were on the team last year and didn't make it this year, it's not, a knock on them. Like some of them like came to camp and they played well, but it's just like kind of a different piece of like what this like our staff is like looking for and what we want, like from a system standpoint, like how is our D system going to differ from this this year versus last year. Like we didn't play Canada in the final game last year. Like yeah, Czech Republic obviously very very good, they beat Canada, but that's always something you take into consideration as well. So again, it's like not a knock on the current players. Like they helped us win a gold medal last year. It's just a different perspective, different system, and finding like those players who fit into that. And again, like I said, every event, every tournament is a fresh slate. So they're not the first ones to experience that.
Got it. And you can argue it both ways. So there's one, which is, hey, your captains from the last 2 years have been 3-year players, but you're going up against Canada, who wants to win. That only takes
Yeah.
2 years of players, and so by definition, they are going to be an older team if you're taking that youngest level that the USA Hockey considers.
Yeah. Yeah. And we like our final game in the series, like that was like I feel like a really good reflection of like our team and like the style of play we wanted and our team identity. We, won in a shootout and I thought it was just like a really great game and like leaving the series on that note, like we felt really good like with that group and who we brought. Obviously made a couple changes, things like that, but that was like okay, like these kids can do it. They like I think all many like 3 out of the 5, like at least 2 of the 2009s, or 3 of them like scored in that third game. Like they kind of led the way for us. So that was like kind of an enlightening moment for us. Like, okay, like they can handle playing against Canada.
Got it. Yeah, and maybe you can just help explain to folks how it works. So you have the under 18 camp, and then talk about the next 3 or 4 events that come up that eventually end up in the under 18 World Championships.
Yeah, so like there's the U18 select camp that you're ultimately trying out for, that's in August, and like the following week we play a 3-game series against Canada. So that U18 select camp gets narrowed down to 1 team. We play against Canada, it alternates. 1 year it's in Canada, another year it's in the US. And then that we have after that, we watch, go around watching the players back in their on their club teams. And then there's a selection camp. So like based on August, the camp, the series, how they've been doing since. We will have like a selection camp in October, which is like very short, like 3 days, just to like get everyone together. It's like a little over, it's like 30 some odd players. And that's like the last touch point we get, having everyone together before we like select the world's team, which is in like the first couple weeks of January. So yeah, it's like, it is like a hard like team to evaluate for, because like you really just get like the U18 select camp, like some like the 16 17s will be good this year as well. Then like the series and the selection camps, like 3 events of seeing like really what the level of hockey they'll be playing against. It's nice to see them on their club teams, but it's just not it's exact reflection of like the level of play they'll be at. So you get a lot of different versions of players. But that's kind of like the process of how it works.
Got it. And not to mention, the 5 players who didn't return from the under 18s from last year, but you also did replace actually 7 of the 25 players from the under 18 series that ended up making making it to the World Championships. Were any of them injury related? And once again, what goes into that process? Because if none of those 7 were injured, I'm pretty sure they're pretty disappointed, that they actually didn't make it, because they thought they were that close.
The 7 players that didn't make it last year that
played in August in the under 18 series that got replaced to play at the World Championships.
Oh yeah. Were there 7 of them?
Yeah, 7.
Wow. Yeah, maybe there were. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's, the series, like it's a team, but again, like everything is a tryout. Like it's more of like how, again, like how you can handle playing against Canada. Like they had a good camp. They look really good throughout the season. And then it's whether just like mentally, or if it's, physical thing, where like you just like, especially as like an under 18 player, it's hard. Like it's, a different type of pressure. I've been there, and sometimes it's like just too much in that moment for some players, or sometimes you just didn't have a good series, and that happens too. It doesn't ever mean like, again, if you're like cut from one team, especially at the U18 age, like it doesn't mean like your whole career is like done. And like, I know it feels that way, but like it really doesn't. Like I think the stat is like, we like counted, it was like 20 to 23 players who've made a U18 team have like gone on to be an Olympian, and only one goalie has ever, who's been on the U18 team, has become an Olympian. That's Alex Cavallini. So like, because you made the U18 team doesn't mean you're gonna like make a national team, and vice versa. Like you always have a chance and opportunity. So like I hope players who've been cut aren't like discouraged or anything, like use it as like fuel and an opportunity to get back there. Because I've seen players who have, like Megan Keller, who was cut from a U18 team, and look at her now,
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, I talked about this with Kristen. In my first conversation with her, she basically says is stop focusing just on the under 18. This is at the 15s camp. This is the big picture. This is a long career and potential USA hockey. And these are just milestones along the way. And like you said, you don't want to peak at the under 18. You want to be peaking later on, because it's so, if you can peak, on an Olympic team, that's the place to do it.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
all right, so let's get into the under 18s actual World Championships from just a few weeks ago. What was the strategy? And let me just be clear. So I've been obviously watching the under 18s for the last few years, and basically U.S. and Canada basically dominate the group play, and as long as they don't lose to Czechia or Sweden in the semis, after those teams make the adjustments to limiting high scoring chances against them, then you make it to the finals, and yet that game is completely different than unless Canada and US played each other in the group play. So like what's the strategy? Because you're basically playing 3 different types of tournaments, like the group play, surviving the semis, and then playing, Canada or US, depending on which team you are.
Yeah. Well, like first, like Sweden, I feel like is kind of like, they lost to Japan. I mean, they beat Japan in overtime one of the games, but they're a really skilled, fast team. Like they're hard to, and they had a really, really good goalie. So like anything could happen when you play like a team like Sweden. But like our strategy, especially with players who are 15 16 years old, it's like one game at a time, like one shift at a time. We can't like try and map out how this is going to go, because we'll drive ourselves crazy doing it. Just like before like every game, it's like understanding who we're playing against, what their systems, how we can combat them. And we're mostly focused on us, like how can we come into this game most prepared. And it's just one period and one shift, one game at a time. And then once that's over, focusing on the next one. Because it can feel so daunting. Like, we play this exhibition game. Who knows how it's going to go? Like last year we lost to Czech in the exhibition game, and it was like, it's easy to be like, oh God, we just lost in the scrimmage to Czech Republic. Like, what's going to happen? It's just like, okay, what can we learn from this? How can we use this to be better the next game? And kind of just all like changing either whether it's like systems, lineups, whatever it is, special teams. Like if there's little changes we need to make there from the previous game, then we'll do that. Whether it's based on the next team or just something we need to do internally. But outside of that, it's just like one thing at a time. And just like, then you kind of just like land in the final game after that. And you're like, look at all this work we've done. And it's really cool to see the growth that each player and just like how they come together as a team, like on and off the ice, like in a short 2 weeks, like people who, are on BK are really good friends with Shattuck kids who are friends with, Minnesota high school players. It's like cool to just see everyone come together. And I think that's the most important piece too, is just like having them kind of have that internal belief to buy in. And then we kind of go through the systems one game at a time.
Got it. So let's talk about like playing Canada. So last year, after the World Championships were done, I wrote a piece around Canada shouldn't just pick offensive defensemen, because if you look at the reason why they lost in the semis is basically their D basically made major mistakes, and they came back this year, right? And Czechia did an amazing job learning from their group game with Canada and played a defensive structure which minimized, because they were getting outshot. Czechia was getting outshot like crazy, but then they capitalized on their few opportunities by taking advantage of D that were more offensive than defensive. Right. But they came back this year with a completely different strategy, which is we are going to play structured hockey, and we are going to play a system, and we are going to play boring hockey when we play the US. And this game was not very exciting in the finals, but you had trouble adjusting and trouble scoring goals. So what's your perspective on how to think about this? Because they came in with a strategy and they executed really well. And this was not something that you'd used to because you guys won last year.
Yeah. I mean, we knew going in like Canada's an incredibly talented, like physically strong, but also just like collectively strong as a group and as a team. Like we knew the challenge we were up against. Obviously they have Primerano who just, quarterbacks the whole thing. And so it was, kind of coming up like, how can we generate like scoring opportunities and get through that structured system. And we definitely, struggled to do that in that final game. Obviously it was, we were getting shots blocked. They get that power play goal and, we have a young team. You could tell like we were deflated. And it's like, how can we kind of, again, learn from this, like moving forward of like, all right, if there's a style of play like this in the future, like what, types of like players do we think can get through that both mentally and physically? Like that's how I think about it in my mind. Just because, and it's not like, and it could be just like the same players who, either had a bad game or were, very like, you could tell there were nerves in the beginning. No one wanted to like kind of take a risk and make a mistake. And trust me, I get that. I've been there. But you like, now it's like, okay, how have they used that to be stronger moving forward? So like, I am really excited to see like how those players develop and grow, and if that changes, and how we can kind of formulate a team that can get through a very defensive style of play. Not to say like, who knows, we may play Canada again, we may not. It's like one thing at a time, but like it is always, it's like I always want to learn from an experience like that. So like those are things that I think about.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how the game of chess against Canada plays out.
I know, it's like it always comes down to like one game, like Olympics, like very rarely like Canada or the US will lose in the semis, but like you're ultimately planning for like one game. You don't do it right away, but like in the back of your head that that's a very possible outcome.
A couple of years ago, I said, at least at the Olympic level, that it would be for hockey. It would be great if they made the gold medal actually a best of 3 or a best of 5 or a best of 7
Yeah,
between, because it's likely going to be Canada and the U.S. And at least you're going to get a huge amount of ratings watching every single one of those games. So I'm not
I
sure you
know
could do
you're
that at
not
the
the
under
first
18s.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not the first person to say that. I think my brother said that, like one of the, and he like he's obviously a big hockey fan, but he's like, it should definitely be a best of 3 because it's also like fun to watch. Like people like watching US versus Canada. So,
Okay,
yeah,
we got to start wrapping up. So I have one more under 18 specific question. How come you only
yeah.
played one goalie for every game, the entire series?
Um, the whole, yeah. Well, again, that's like not my
Area of
area of
expertise.
expertise,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
we kind of, I think the theory was, it's with goalies, it's interesting because like if your goalie that, plays one game, allegedly like your number one goalie has, a really good game, like you kind of want to roll on that momentum. Like hockey's obviously a game of momentum, but from what I've gathered, like goaltending is really a game of momentum, and you want like to instill the most confidence like in that goaltender who's doing well. And even if you communicate the message of like, hey, we just want to get someone else in, like you're playing great, blah, 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 like that, when you could just continue to roll them, that it can kind of like create some hesitation, and you want to just like kind of double down on like what's going well. And so it has, again, nothing to do with any of the other goalies. It's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Morgan she had a phenomenal tournament. And like, she's proven to be like a winner, and the other two definitely are as well. It just like was her moment, her opportunity. And like, we wanted to win, and she was playing well. So it's like, let's just go with what's working. Not to say that it wouldn't have worked with the other goalies. It's just like, that's the hard part about goalie. There's only one of them, that's part of the reason why I didn't play goalie, but also because I was not good. But it's a hard position. It's a hard position to be in if you're not the one in. So I think they all did such a great job of like owning their roles. It's not an easy thing to do, and they were phenomenal.
Got it. Okay, so turning the page, Liz Katie Norton has coached the team for 2 years in a row, which means it's probably time for somebody else to take the mantle. Any thoughts on who or when you'll be announcing the next coach?
Yeah, I mean, we're still kind of like, talking about like who. I mean, obviously, like I love Liz. Like I think she has done such a fantastic job with that team and the group and the players. Like she just like really is just like such a great leader and role model for them. And it was such a blast working with her. Like if it'd be great, to have her stay, but like we have to, move on. I get that. So probably, I mean, we usually have to know like within the next like couple months, like we announce, I believe, from like years past. So we've been, talking amongst of different options, and once we solidify that within the next month or two, it'll be released. But we like to keep some element of like consistency, especially like, again, like just looking at it from a player standpoint and from an under 18, like consistency is important, like familiar faces, like just like the message that you're sharing. It helps if there was someone who was there like last year and you just remember and know, you're not like just always like having brand new people, and someone like who knows the process and who's kind of been there. So having a balance of all that. I also like a fresh perspective, but it's kind of like having a balance of the two.
Got it. So you're saying is one of the assistant coaches might be one of the coaches next year. So
But maybe, but nothing's confirmed. So we'll see what
understood.
happens.
Understood. Okay. Last question. What advice do you have for players who are about to enter, the district or even at the
The
local
gauntlet.
level? Yeah, going through the process, right? Already, some players have been named to go to district camp and things like that. What advice do you have for these players as they go through the USA Hockey evaluation process?
Yeah, I think similar to like what our strategy is for like tournaments is like one shift at a time, one practice at a time, one game at a time, where you're at these evaluation like weekends. It's like easy to get like to look around, see who's watching, get caught up in like, the pressure from your parents, the pressure you're putting on yourself, like, oh, I have to make this team, like if this person played bad, so like if I can make it over these two people and XYZ, it's like you'll drive yourself nuts. Like just like control what you can control. It sounds like cliche and I say it literally all the time, but it's like, don't waste energy on things that you can't control. Like if you're like put in the work, which a lot of those players once they're there have, like, do your best, enjoy the experience, and like literally the rest will take care of itself. If you have a bad shift, you have a bad game, like just, learn from it or forget about it. If you can't learn from it, forget about it, move on. And because that's what we also see too. If someone has a bad game, but then they respond really well and have a fantastic game the next game, like that's almost better than just having two pretty good games. So it's like, because that's a huge thing, is like how can you respond to like adversity like that. So just one thing at a time and don't overthink it. Just, play your game. And if they got to that level where they're being, they're trying out, then, they've done pretty well up to that point. So, and enjoy the experience. Like I wish I was going through it again. Like it goes by quick. So have fun.
Well, that's perfect because clearly you've been at every single stage all these players have been through yourself, and now you're at the level where you're able to not only evaluate, but you can actually talk to these players and give them advice and things like that. So Haley, I want to thank you so much for doing this, because it's great to pick your brain both at the player level and kind of the scout
Yeah.
level. And thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I really want to thank Haley for coming on the podcast. She covered a lot of territory on what it takes to be the best of the best in women's hockey and the USA Hockey girls player development process. You can learn more about Haley and find information about the camps on the USA Hockey website. You can find links to both in the show notes.